So you've finished up watching my how to make a simple YouTube thumbnail video, and you've finished making your first thumbnail, and maybe you've made a couple thumbnails, and you're ready to do something bigger, something a little bit bigger. Well, I really hope you've been practicing, because this next thumbnail is like some serious Drake 0 to 100 kind of stuff. So let's check it out. And boom, there it is, right there. This pretty good. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think this one looks pretty good. And you're probably thinking to yourself, if you're new to this, or maybe if you're not so familiar with Photoshop, you're probably looking at me like, okay, so cool, it's a nice thumbnail, but why in the world did we go from making this thumbnail to this thumbnail? I mean, there's really no middle ground. You've got this thumbnail, and it's kind of super simple, and it's kind of dinky, you know. And then you got this one, which is, you know, kind of feels way more professional. So why did you just do this super jump? And the reason for that is that with the dinky thumbnail, as you saw in my previous video, I really focused on what kind of information needs to be on the thumbnail. You know, so the 6 forms of information, you know, the characters, you blah blah blah. I've said this a lot, and I didn't really focus a whole lot on aesthetics. And that's, like I said, I wanted to focus more on information, because you know, if a thumbnail doesn't present information, then it's not really all that important. And it's also to set the sort of set the standard for what we're going to do later. These are kind of like the principles, or the groundwork that we use to build up to something like this. And as a result, in the second video, we're just going to focus a lot more on aesthetics and on the presentation. And but pretty much, but seriously, the reason why I did it so I made such a super complicated thumbnail that most thumbnails, actually going to bring it up, they don't even like go this far. Like, this is VG Bootcamp. They're not taking it that far. You know, here goes Big House 4, whoop, Big House 3. And it's even this, you know, this is kind of complicated, but it's not taking it, in some ways it's really not taking it as far as this thumbnail right here. And the reason for that is that I wanted to be able to show you guys all the techniques that I use for making thumbnails and banners or any kind of creative thing, all kind of in one go. And I also figured that, you know, if I just make a thumbnail that's really ridiculous, you know, that takes a lot of effort, that I have to show you everything, you know, by the time you get done watching and following along with this video, you know, making thumbnails that look like, you know, that look like this, you know, or, you know, even this one that I made, you know, these should be like easy. These should be not scary at all, and that's really what I'm going for. And it should actually feel like a fun and creative activity. And you know, besides, you know, we're gonna break this thing down. I'm not just gonna like throw things at you. I'm gonna break this thing down into smaller, more digestible segments, you know, to make this a little bit more manageable and a little less overwhelming. And also, you're gonna see some of the old stuff from the previous video, but you're also gonna see a whole lot of new stuff too, you know. So, you know, let's dive right in. So I decided to make the thumbnail that we're working on now to be Windy City Smash themed, because partially because I want it to be a continuation of the thumbnail that we made before. B, I live like half an hour away from them, so, and they're the homies, so, you know, respect to Windy City Smash. And really, 3 is that I couldn't think of a theme on my own at the moment for some reason, so I just kind of stuck with what I knew about. So in order to do a little bit more research on the theme, whereas in the other picture we just kind of went with like a blue background, I actually went on their Facebook and Twitch page, and the first thing I see is I see a lot of blues and I see a lot of reds, and I also see the city of Chicago. They kind of use that as their whatever this thing is called, the Facebook banner deal. And I look over here at Twitch, and they also have a picture of Chicago. So that's going to be a pretty big part of what's going to contribute to this thumbnail, as you can see with the background here. So we're actually going to make a new file, and we're going to call this thumbnail idea 2, because the one from the last video was thumbnail idea 1, so you know, why not? And we're going to make this 480 by 270. That's because this has an aspect ratio of 16 by 9, and YouTube thumbnails tend to like this 16 by 9 ratio. So we're going to go with that. And it's also good if your thumbnail is just keep it pretty small too. And we're going to press OK. And now that we've got this this thumbnail, let's make sure that's actually the right. Yep, actually, real fast, we're gonna check and see if that is the right aspect ratio. So this also teaches you to research aspect ratios so that you know what you're talking about. And we've got the 16 by 9. And they actually don't go smaller than that. So we're just going to go with this. We're going to go by this with the 640 by 360 actually, just to be safe. So we're going to make a new one, and we're going to call it the same thing, or more or less the same thing. And we're going to give it this 640 by 360 aspect, or 360 pixel range, and we're going to press OK. And we're going to get rid of this other one. Ooh, there you go. So now first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to make a new layer, and we're going to call it the building. And we're going to, which is actually not a correct title for it, because we're going to go over to Google or Bing or whatever, and we're going to type in Chicago, which is actually incorrect. We're going to type in Chicago skyline. And we're going to go to pictures, or the images, and we're going to look for like a picture of Chicago, preferably nighttime. And you don't have to get the same picture as me, because you might be using a different search engine or whatever, but it might look better if you get a picture of Chicago that's like nighttime and has like a lot of lights. Like, I like this one. Actually, this is the exact same one I used from this one, so that actually makes things really easy. So we're going to go and we're going to get this picture, and we're going to click on it, and we're going to save it to wherever. I'm saving it to mine's. Well, actually, I already have a copy of it. So you can save yours to a folder, make a folder, save it to your desktop, whatever. And we are going to go back into Photoshop, grab the picture of your Chicago skyline, and 1 second. There you go. We're going to drag it over here, and we're going to place it. And we're going to just make it bigger. We're not going to worry about making sure that it fits perfectly. We're just going to make it so that it covers all of the entire layer. And we're going to place the file. And there we go. We're also going to rename it, just because, you know, it's good to rename stuff. So just Chicago skyline, or skyline. And the cool thing about making thumbnails is that you don't necessarily have to be autistic. Yeah, you don't have to be autistic. You don't have to be necessarily be artistic. You just need to be able to know where to find things like textures and pictures, and you need to know how to like alter them in a way and sort of composite a bunch of other things that other people made in a way to come out with your own or sort of original image. And that's kind of what we're doing to make this thumbnail over here. Like a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff in here I did not make, such as the character sprites and stuff. You just kind of take stuff that already exists and mess with it and kind of bend it to your don't bend it to your will, but sort of use it in a way that's beneficial to whatever your project is. Now, that's not always the case with everything that you do, because there's certain cases where that might be plagiarism, but I think in this case we get a buy, you know. So the next thing we're going to do is we got this picture of Chicago, and it's all cool looking. And we're actually going to we're going to come over here, and we're going to right click, and go to blending options. And we're going to go click on color overlay. And boom, you got all this red, and it defeated the purpose of us doing all that. But we're actually going to go and we're going to click on the color picker. So it's this thing. And we're going to look for like probably kind of a bluish purple. So I'm going to go with that and see what it looks like. And we're going to turn down the opacity. And I don't really like that. So we're actually going to mess with the blend modes. So blend modes are cool because blend modes allow you, instead of just like turning the opacity down and it kind of looks bad, you can go into blend modes and you can do things like darken, and you see how it looks a little bit better than if I just kept it normal and turned the opacity down. Like now you can kind of tell that it's like two things kind of meshing together. But this one, they sort of blend together a little bit better. So you should mess around with blend modes and see if it makes your image look cooler or less cool. They usually make things look better. So I would seriously suggest blending things together with blend modes. So I'm messing around with this and messing around with it. I might make this a little bit darker. Choose darken again. Nah, it's too dark. For the time being, we're gonna choose, we're just gonna choose darken, or we're gonna choose a purple. Doesn't have to be the same purple as me, just a purple, sort of a purplish blue, and we're gonna turn it down to like 75. This may or may not matter later, but we're just kind of setting the stage. Next thing that we're going to do is, as you can see, there's kind of already a vignette. If you've watched my other video, you should probably know what a vignette is. It's like when you have shadow, sort of a round shadow along the edges, but it's really only kind of in these two corners, and we kind of want it all over. So we're going to make a vignette by going to filter, going to lens correction, and going down here where it says vignette. And you kind of got a circle, so it's a little more, it's focusing the light a little bit more towards the middle and away from the edges, because that's where like your character sprites and stuff are going to be. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to give this a little bit of like an edgier appeal. So we're going to go to blur, which is in filter, where you where you saw lens correction, and we're going to go over here to the motion blur. And as you can see, it sort of blurs it out. So here's with pretty much no blur, and here's like a lot of blur, and you're probably not going to want to make it that blurry because you can't really tell what it is, and it's probably making you feel a little sick inside. So you want it to blur. This is kind of up to you. This might be an artistic thing, so I'm giving you guys a little bit more artistic freedom for this thumbnail. You kind of want a thumbnail, or not thumbnail, you kind of want it to be blurry enough that you can kind of notice that it's blurry, but you don't want it to be so blurry that it's like woo, like that. Like that's kind of disorienting. So I'm gonna go with 7 and see what that looks like. It's a little much. I'll go with 5. There we go. Cool. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to, since this is going to be the background for our thumbnail, I actually want this to look a little bit more menacing. So we're going to go back into the search engine, and we're going to type in lightning. And the type of lightning that we're looking for is preferably a lightning picture that doesn't have a ground. So like this picture is probably not going to work because you kind of got this giant piece of darkness here. And when going into blend modes, that's going to show up pretty hard. Like you're going to have all this cool lightning, and then all of a sudden it's going to be like a darkness. So you're going to want to look for a picture of like lightning in the sky. So a good picture actually is this one. And it's also pretty big. It's a pretty big picture too. So that's pretty good. So we're going to take this one, and you're going to save it. Okay, that's actually the same lightning too. So you're gonna save it to the same folder that you saved, or to your desktop, the same place you saved it here, and you're gonna pull it up, and you're going to drag it and drop it. And luckily for me, for some reason it fits perfectly, and we're gonna place it. And if it doesn't fit perfectly for you, just kind of stretch it out until it fits across the entire image, kind of like mine looks like right now, and we're going to place the file. So this isn't really helpful, so we're going to go into blend modes, and once again, here's the cool thing about blend modes. We're going to go to where it says blending options default, and we're going to click on the blend mode. So right now it's in normal, so it's just a picture, but we're going to choose lighten and see what happens. So as you can see, we kind of got rid of the other image, and everything that stayed is the lightning. And just so you know, when you choose lighten in the blend modes, what that does is, or this sort of lighten category, so all this stuff down here, is it usually keeps the stuff that's brighter than the stuff underneath it. So if you've got like whites, like all the darks in your picture are gonna like kind of get blended out, whereas all the light stuff in your picture is gonna get blended into your image. Whereas if you do the opposite with darken, your darks are gonna kind of go away, and your lights are either gonna get inverted like this, or they're just gonna not show up. So for us, we might go overlay. Let's check that out. It's a bit much. So let's check out. We're going to go with, let's check out screen. And blend modes are kind of just something you have to just play around with, because there might be one blend mode that looks really cool, and some look really scary. And you really want to create the idea of, like, do you want it to be scary? Do you want it to be cool? And you really have to like take that into account. So I might go with like this color dodge. I'm also going to turn the opacity down because the lightning's a little extreme. So there we go. And for the time being, you've pretty much got your background. And we're going to move on to the next part of the video. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the characters into the picture. So I already have my character icons. I have the Zero Suit Samus and the Captain Falcon, like the Super Smash Brothers 4 sprites of them. But in order to find these sprites, you're basically going to go to, I'm pretty sure this is what I did, you're going to go to Super Smash Brothers Wiki. And so it's going to be SSB Wiki, and we're just going to say Captain Falcon. What is it, Smash 4? Yeah. So yeah, you click on it, and you see you got his little wiki picture right here. So you're going to click on it, and as you can see, it's a PNG, and it's also a transparent, which is pretty cool because it's Smash 4, so he gets this little shadow too. So it's already like a transparent, so you don't have to like deal with any of the craziness. It's just, you just take it, click on it, save the image as, probably save it to the same folder, or save it to your desktop or something. I already have it, so I'm not going to save it. I'm going to pull down, and we're going to grab Captain Falcon, and you can do the same thing for Zero Suit Samus. Just go to our Smash Brothers or SSBWiki.com, go to the Zero Suit Samus for Super Smash Bros. 4, and you should also be able to find her as well. But for now, I'm going to move on. You can always just pause this video. And, excuse me, you're going to drag the Zero Suit Samus down, and we're gonna make it a little bit bigger. So this is also for you guys who forgot, when you click on this thing, you're going to hold Shift button down, and you're going to go to the corner. Actually, it doesn't really matter which way you go. Actually, it does. I lied. So you're going to go to the corner, one of these quarter ones, and you're going to pull down. And it keeps her proportions correct by holding the Shift button down. So we got Zero Suit Samus right there. I'm going to place her. And we have Captain Falcon. We're going to drag him down. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hold Shift button down. And boom. He's a little small. I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. There you go. And I'm going to pull them down. I'm going to actually pull them both down just a little bit. There you go. So there goes Falcon. We're going to place him. And I'm also going to scoot Samus down a little bit. I'm going to hold Shift button down and scoot her on down. And so I'm going to show you a few things that don't really matter for this situation. Well, okay, so I'm going to show you guys some stuff. I have the Smash 4 sprites, so it doesn't really show up very well because these are very well drawn, very well lit sprites. So I'm just going to mess with this. So let's just say that these characters aren't lit very well. Let's say for some reason he's really dark on one side, or he is really dark on like the person's face, and you want to change that. So you can go into blend modes, and right now I'm messing with Zero Suit Samus. And you can click on gradient overlay, and what it does is it creates this gradient where you've got white up here and it starts getting a little bit darker. It starts turning more black down this way. So if you go into blend modes, and once again I'm telling you blend modes are amazing, you can click on overlay, or maybe not overlay. We can mess with different blend modes, and you can also change the angle. Actually, this is not a good example at all. So maybe it's overlay. That's too much. So, but as you can see, there's like as you move the angle around, it's making it, there's certain areas become, so over here it's like really light, and over here it's really dark. So if you have a character sprite that is just badly lit for some reason, because maybe it's like a 3D sprite that someone like just used the pen tool and cut out in Facebook or not in Photoshop. You can just come over here to the gradient tool and make the person's face a little bit more brighter or darker. And you can also control a little bit more by like changing the opacity. So it doesn't have to be as dark as it's making it right now. You can change the opacity more like that, or make it a little bit darker. You know, you can mess with this kind of stuff. It's a little harder to explain because these are really good pictures. So maybe I'll explain it a little bit later on. But for now, we're gonna move on. So really past this point, it's really just kind of little nitpicky stuff. I'm going to add a drop shadow to Zero Suit Samus just to scoot her out from the background just a little bit more. So we're going to, this is actually pretty good, but I might make it a little bit more like that. Like this might not even actually be noticeable in the final thumbnail, considering how thumbnails are really tiny in YouTube, so it might not really matter all that much. But it's just a nice way. It's just a nice way to think about. Just in case you do something else, like a poster, this might be something nice to think about. So I'm gonna give her a little bit of a line around her character. Do the same thing for Captain Falcon. I'm gonna go over, give him a drop shadow. His drop shadow is actually facing, kind of going the wrong direction. So actually, one other thing is turn off global light. Global light makes it so that if I have global light and I move this, it moves her shadow as well. And we don't want that. We want her shadow to not move with his shadow. So every single time you do a drop shadow, anytime you do anything and it has global light, please just turn off the global light, because it'll just make your life a lot better. So we turn off global light, and we're going to make his shadow. So we want his shadow to kind of be, we want his shadow to be on his back and kind of like by his thighs and stuff. Same thing with her. Just to like sort of give him a little bit of an outline. And that's pretty much all it takes for now. That's pretty much all it takes to make a character. So we're going to move on to the next section. So the next thing that we're going to work on are tops and bottoms. I call them tops and bottoms because I don't know what the actual name for these things are, and I'm pretty sure they don't have an actual name. So I call them tops and bottoms. So in order to make these things, we're going to go to the layer way at the top, go to new, and click on layer. And we're going to call this one, actually we're going to call this one bottom. You thought we were going to do top, what didn't you? And to make a bottom, we're going to go over to the rectangular marquee tool. I've got it set to the circle, but you can go to the rectangular marquee tool. You're going to hold down the right click button, right click, wrong one, left click, and you're going to hold it down, keep holding it down, and as you can see, you've got these lines that are moving. So this is actually kind of big, so we're going to actually scoot it down a little bit. Except we can't, so never mind. We'll just move on. So we're going to go over to this brush tool, and it's already set to black. So I am going to just color it in, or I guess it's like a gray black. And we're going to go back to the rectangular marquee tool, click on it, right click, deselect. Next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to scoot it down a little bit because it's taking up more space than I would like it to. There we go. And next we're going to go over to where it says bottom, and we're going to right click and go to the blending modes. And we're going to go over to this area, this new area that we haven't really talked about a whole lot. It's called bevel and emboss. Although I think we talked about it a little bit in the last video. So we're going to mess with the bevel and emboss, and what this is going to do is it's going to give it sort of it's going to play around with lights and shadows, and it's going to give it sort of this illusion of a sort of semi-3D object, even though it's totally not. It's 2D, you know. So if you mess with the depth, you see you've got these sort of lines that are making it look like kind of like a square. So you're going to mess with it. I'm just going to mess with it for a little bit and see if I can find something that just looks good. Alright. Like I said before, a lot of this is really just like a lot of experimentation. Alright, that's a little too much. because we just want it to feel like a curve, you know, like you've got like a round piece of plastic or something. And we might turn off global light. There we go. I'll actually almost kind of sort of fix stuff. We're going to turn off, we're going to lower the highlight a little bit. So we're going to make the highlight 50. And let's see the shadow. So as you see down here, you've got the highlight mode and you've got the shadow mode. So the shadow makes the dark parts a little bit more dark, even though right now it's not doing it. And highlight makes the white parts a little bit more bright. So that's what that does. So right here we're just gonna make the highlights over here in shading 60. We're gonna make the shadow 60. We're gonna make the it's gonna be an inner bevel, and you gotta make sure that the direction's up. We're gonna make the depth 75 actually, because you know, nice round numbers, 150 and 10 for soften. So, and all this stuff can pretty much stay the same. So we're gonna keep it like that. Next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to stroke. And as you can see, we got this line that just kind of goes through it. We're gonna make the color more of a not white, but kind of like a gray. And we're gonna make the size 1. We're also gonna make the opacity 75. So now it's kind of like this cool little tiny line. It's almost like a highlight, you know. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about textures. And textures is kind of along the same lines of what we did with this Chicago skyline. It's where you kind of take something that you didn't make, that you kind of found on the internet, and using it to like make your own stuff look better. So we're going to go over to Bing again, or to Google, or whatever you use, and we're going to type in steel texture. And textures are awesome, because usually they're like stock photos that you can use to give like a sort of sheen, or once again a texture to maybe an item that would look kind of boring and lifeless. You know, like this is kind of boring, but once we put a texture on, it's going to look a little bit cooler. So I'm actually going to go with, we're going to go to shiny steel texture actually. See what that gives us. We want something with a little bit of shine to it. So I'm actually going to click on, I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to save it. I will laugh if this is the same. Yeah, okay. Nope, actually it's different. Okay, that's cool. So we're going to take it. So you don't have to get this shiny steel texture. You can kind of just get a piece of steel that's got these sort of lines moving horizontal. You know, something that feels like steel, you know. It doesn't have to be this. So we're going to go back. I'm going to go over here to my materials. And actually it is the same one, so never mind. And we're going to drag it down here. And we're going to make it wider. So that encapsulates the whole thing. And we're going to place it. Actually, this looks kind of cool by itself. But that's not what we're going to use it for. We're going to bring it above bottom. So now it should be overtaking everything. So next we're going to hold down shift key. We're going to left click. We're going to left click. And we're going to drag it down until it's right kind of on top of the layer that's bottom. That's called bottom. There we go. And once again, we're going to go over to blend modes. And we're going to play around with blend modes a little bit. Let's see, darken. Nah, probably overlay. Alright, so as you can see, it gives your picture, it's really subtle. Like, it's really subtle, but it kind of gives it it gives it a little bit more of a dynamic sort of feel to it. Like it's made out of a material, your little bottom area, and it's not just a piece of black. Oops. So we're going to go redo that. So I'm going to choose overlay. And yeah, you can mess with the opacity, like if you want more or less. I'm going to actually make the opacity 75. And that's kind of a nitpicky thing, but you know. This is the way, I'm just showing you, this is really more to showcase how blend modes can be used to make your stuff look more like authentic and lifelike. So next thing that we're going to do is we are going to duplicate this layer, and we're going to call it top, because all we're doing is we're going to hold down shift key and we're going to move it up, and now you have a top. And I'm going to move it about there. I might actually scoop bottom even more down. There we go. Which will require me to also move the shiny texture down, the little metal texture down too. So once again, we're going to go over to your shiny metal texture. I'm going to drag another one in because we need to make the top look a little bit like steel as well. And we're going to place it. And we're going to scoot this one. We're going to hold down the shift key, do the same thing we did for the bottom, except we're putting it at the top. And we're putting it about there. Once again, go to blend modes by right clicking the layer. And you're going to go to overlay. And as I said before, it's like super subtle. And it might not matter for your for things like thumbnails, but if you make something in that's more like a poster or something that's bigger, you're going to be glad that you know about this. And so the next thing that we're going to do, so if we look at this like the original picture, I have the Windy City Smash insignia or logo, and I also have the EXP Gaming Lounge, which is the place where they hold their not bi-weeklies, their weeklies. And how did I get those? You know, it helps make it look more authentic. And it's actually a really simple answer to that. I went to their Facebook, and I clicked on their little profile picture, and I went over here. Okay, so, and I pressed save image. And also, we're really lucky, it's also Adobe Fireworks PNG, and that's how you know it's going to be pretty good quality. I did the same thing for their EXP Gaming Lounge picture. So you got to go to the Windy City Smash Facebook in order to get this logo. If you want to get the EXP Gaming Lounge picture, you got to go to the EXP Gaming Lounge Facebook, because for some reason they're two different things, I guess. So like I said, that is not the same people. EXP Gaming Lounge, Illinois. So yeah, as you can see, we're going through the process. And so yeah, we click on it, and all you need to really do is right click and save the image, and you should have it on your desktop or wherever. So we're going to go back into Photoshop, and we're going to grab this EXP Gaming Lounge picture, and we're going to throw it up in this corner. Oh, or never mind, we're going to shrink it down. And we're going to shrink it down some more. We're going to shrink it down a whole lot. There we go. And we're going to place it. And we've got like this black around it. It's in the dark corner, so it's kind of hard to see, but we're going to get rid of that because luckily we have a picture that's pretty much black and white. So we're going to go into blending modes. Actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this name, because this is going to be a pain in the butt later. So we're going to call it the EXP Gaming logo, because numbers don't really help us very much. And we're going to go to the blending modes again, and we're going to click on lighten. And as you can see, lighten got rid of all the black that was around the image before, and now all that's here is, so I'm going to move it over to prove it. Now all that's here is sort of the white, and that's one of the cool things that blend modes are good for. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're also going to grab the Wave Dash Wednesday or the Windy City Smash. Now, unfortunately, my computer doesn't like me. Okay, so I got to get the other one. So if what happened to me is it was an invalid JPEG, whatever that means. So one way to fix this is you got to go, if you have a Facebook account, just log in to your Facebook, go to the Windy City Smash page, and instead of doing what I did with the right click and saving it to your computer, you go down where it says settings or options, kind of in the corner of the picture, and it should tell you that you should be able to download the this logo. So you're going to download it that way instead of the other way, because this is how I got this picture. So we're going to make this a little bit smaller, but you don't really need it in order to move on. It just makes it feel a little bit better, a little more authentic. Make it a little bit smaller. There we go. And we're going to do about the same thing. We're going to place it. And we're going to do about the same thing. It's not going to be as good as the EXP one because it was black and white, whereas this one deals with blue and red, so the blending modes isn't going to be as perfect. So we're just going to play around blend modes and see which one works out the best. Lighten's doing alright, but we're see what does. We see if there's something that does a little bit better. These are really bright. That's my only issue, is that they're really bright. So there might be a way to fix that, because right now you're blending the Windy City Smash logo into this top layer. So, and it's also, the blend mode is set to lighter color. So it works better. So if you got like a light blend mode on, it's better if you scoot the logo into a darker space, because then, as you can see, it shows up a lot better in dark space. So I might just have the Wave Dash or the Windy City Smash or Wave Dash, what is it called? Yeah, Windy City Smash logo in the darkness, and I'm gonna move the EXP logo to the light actually. That way you got everything, and it doesn't look all scary. Next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna make another layer. And we're gonna call this the Wave Dash Wednesday Wave Dash Wednesday layer, because that's what we're gonna type into it. So you go click on layer, click on the title, the type tool, and we're gonna type out Wave Dash Wednesday, and we're actually gonna make it small because we're actually gonna put something beneath it. So we're gonna actually make this 30 pixels instead. And we're gonna move it on up. And we're gonna make another layer. No, we're not gonna make another layer. We're gonna go over to the type tool. And we're gonna say, well, today's date right now is, at the time of this video, is July 21st, 2015. Gonna move it beneath the Wave Dash Wednesday. Make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Move it a little bit towards the middle. There we go. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put stuff on this sort of bottom area. And the bottom area is going to say Melee Singles. Oh, not Melee. I'm so used to typing that. These are Smash 4 sprites. So we're gonna say, so it's gonna say Smash 4 Singles, and we're gonna make this little line here, and it's also gonna say Grand Finals, because, you know, why not? And we're gonna make this a little bit bigger because it's not gonna take up that much. It's gonna take up a lot more space. And we're gonna scoot it over, and boom, there we go. I might make this come out a little bit more. There we go. Once again, it's nitpicky stuff. It really kind of depends on you. And okay, so that's basically everything that we need to do for the top and bottom. So we can move on to the next segment. Alright, so next up is making the name boxes. And in order to make the name boxes for the two characters, we're going to go over to layer, and we're going to go to new, and we're going to go to layer again, and we're going to name this name box left. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to go over to the, what is this called, rectangular marquee tool, and we're going to draw a fairly large box icon right here, and make it a little bit bigger. Make it about that big. There we go. And we're going to come over here, the same black, or the grayish black that we have. We're going to go to the brush tool, and we're going to color it in. Go back to the rectangular marquee tool and deselect. We're going to come over to the layer, the name box left layer, and we're going to right click, go over to the blending options again. And we're going to, and because this is a box and not a name tag, that's the name that I give it to signify that it's going to be like a 3D looking object. So we're going to go over to the bevel and emboss. And as you can see, it's starting to look more 3D. We're looking for more of a square or rectangular shape. So we're going to reduce the size, maybe we'll increase the size just a little bit. There we go. Because so one thing I'm going to show you is that, if you make this soften higher, the edges become more soft. It becomes more round, like a more round kind of an object. But if you make the soften a little bit less, it looks more, the edges are a little bit more sharp. And also with that said, we're going to come over here to where it says technique, and where it says smooth, we're going to change it to chisel hard. And it makes your edges even more harder. So it looks a little bit more like a like a Kit Kat bar, like a really gross looking Kit Kat bar made out of like pencil or lead or something. And so we're going to actually make the size, and if you increase the size, it makes all of this sort of vertices kind of converge on each other. So we don't want that. We want something that kind of feels more like a triangle. So we're just going to stick with that. And next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over here to blending options, and we're going to go to fill opacity, and we're going to reduce the fill opacity down to about 60. Yeah, 60. And the difference between fill opacity and regular opacity is if we had just changed the regular opacity in general blending, it would make the whole thing disappear. Whereas if you change the fill opacity, it just makes sort of the colors disappear, but you still get the sort of bevel, sort of square shape. And we want to keep that. So once again, we're going to make it 60 again. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over to where our little steel texture is. And for me, it's right over here. I'm going to drag it down to Photoshop. Or we can make copies of the steel textures that you already have here. And we're going to squish it down. Because we're going to make like a nameplate. Probably if you've ever been in like the army, or if you I don't know, if you watched Naruto as a kid and they had the little like ninja headbands, this is kind of like what we're doing right here. And we're going to make it like that. Just pull it out a little bit more, pull it up a little bit. And we're going to say that's good enough. So we're going to place the file, and it looks kind of bad. It really looks like you just put an image on top of some other thing. So we're going to go over to the metal blend mode. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go over to bevel and give it a little bit of a sort of a 3D feel to it. But we're not going to we're going to mess with the depth and the size a little bit. You don't want it to look like completely flat. But there you go, that's a little bit better. Let's see what we can do here. Alright, we're also going to make the chisel a little bit more. Probably, let's see if we can mess with the highlights a little bit. It's a little too bright. Alright, so that's good. It's a little too much shadow. We're going to reduce the shadow a little bit. And for the time being, we're just going to say that's pretty good. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to take the name box left. We're going to duplicate it, call it name box right. And we're going to hold down shift button, click on the box, and drag it over here by Captain Falcon. And we're going to go back over to, well, actually we're going to take this shiny metal texture, we're actually going to change it to metal tag left. And we're going to duplicate it and call it metal tag right for Captain Falcon. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to press the shift button. We're going to hold down on our mouse pad, and we're going to drag it over. There we go. Next thing we're going to do is we're just going to add some fake names. So let's see, what name did I use for these? Yeah, these aren't real people. These are just names I looked at and were like, all right, I could see someone in Smash Brothers calling themselves Vanguard. and someone calling themselves the base, you know, trying to be clever and do like a double sort of a wordplay sort of thing. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna use the same name because I don't really know a whole lot of Smash 4 players. I'm pretty sure there is a famous Zero Suit Samus player, and I'm pretty sure there's probably a well-known Falcon player, but I don't really follow Smash 4 that hard. So, you know, sorry about that. Still much love to Smash 4, but I don't really know. So we're just gonna make up names. And so we're gonna put in Vanguard. You can put in whatever name you want. I'm putting in Vanguard. And I'm gonna scoot it over more towards the middle so it feels more name taggy. I'm also going to go into blend modes. So we're going to go over to bevel. We're using bevel a whole lot, but now what we're going to do is we're going to make the direction go down. So that, well, actually we're going to put a stroke on it too. So that actually comes first. So we're going to mess with the stroke, and we're going to make it 1. And we're going to bring the opacity down to like 75. Then we're going to go over to bevel. And now it's kind of like, so when the direction goes up, it kind of scoots your bevel outward, but when you do down, it kind of scoots it inward. So we're gonna turn up the depth a little bit, and we're also we're just gonna mess around with stuff, see what happens. All right, yeah. Because the original idea was to have it sort of scoot in a little bit more, but since it's a thumbnail, that level of detail might not really matter so much. So we're just going to move on. And we're going to make another name. And this guy is going to be the base. And we are going to do the same thing. Give this thing a stroke around it. Make the stroke 1. Turn the opacity down to about 75. Turn on bevel and emboss. Make the direction down. Soften it up a little bit. And probably give it a chisel, super hard. And probably move it around a little bit. Make it a little bit feel more middle. So pretty much we're at the end of that. This is how you make the name box. It's pretty much the same as a name tag that we made in the other video. It's just a little bit different. It's just a little bit different way of going about it. So now we're going to move on to the next section. So to be perfectly honest, this is roughly where most people would stop. I'm pretty sure most people aren't even going to like make this little name box kind of thing. Like you've got the 6 forms of information. It looks pretty cool. You know, it's got everything that you need. This is usually where people are going to stop in terms of making thumbnails. So those of you who were watching the video at the beginning and thought that, you know, jumping from this sort of simple thumbnail to making sort of this thumbnail was too much, you can think of this as this sort of middle level thumbnail. So if you, to be perfectly honest, this is really all you need, and you can stop watching this video if you're not interested. But if you're interested in adding a little bit of extra flourish, you know, I've got like this like medallion here, and I've got these shadows and stuff. You can stick around, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Alright, so next up we're going to make this cool kind of medallion-esque looking thing. And this is probably the most strange and interesting thing that we've seen so far. It's definitely not the 6 forms of information that we talked about in this simple thumbnail video that I made. But if you look closely, or if you've been paying attention closely, we've been using the bevel and emboss tool to make a lot of stuff for this video, and it's really exactly the same in terms of making this medallion. So we're just going to jump right in and figure this out. So the first thing that we're going to do is, well, luckily we have it already our color set to gray. So we're going to choose actually we're going to make a new layer because we don't want to mess up our layer that we already have. So we're going to call this the middle circle. And we're going to come up to and change the little like brush size tool, and we're going to change the size to something like moderately large. It's not going to be perfect to this other thumbnail that I made, but we just want to get it to be looking remotely kind of like it, you know. So I think 125 is pretty good. So I'm going to pick a circle right here. And we ruined it. It looks totally awful. Now we're just playing. We're going to make this look a lot better soon. So we're going to come over here to bevel and emboss, and we're going to choose this, and we're actually going to make it go downward. Actually, no, that is not the tool we're going to be using. I apologize. We're going to go to inner shadow. That's what I use to make it. And with inner shadow, we're going to make the distance a little bit out more. We're going to change the global light as well. And I think I had it set to, I think the distance was at 0. And I made it, yeah, there we go. I did something like that. Actually, we'll make the choke a little bit smaller. There we go. It should be something along the lines of this. So for the time being, we're going to go with 50 for size and 15 for the choke. And I'm actually going to have to look back and see what I did. Okay, cool. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this middle circle and we're going to duplicate it. And we're going to call this the back circle. So now what we're going to do for this back circle is we're going to go over to the edit sort of tool up here. We're going to come down to the transform area and we're going to choose scale. So now we're going to hold down shift key to keep the proportions right, and we're going to go to a corner, bring it out a little bit. And it's actually better if the back circle this layer is beneath the middle circle because it's supposed to be the back circle. And it definitely helps for what we're trying to do, because I'm going to go back to this thumbnail real fast. The circle we're making is this like lighter gray circle. So you want to be able to see if it kind of lines up pretty well or not. And unfortunately for me, it's a little hard to do on with a mouse. So I'm moving over to my little mouse pad, and that's about right. I'm actually going to change the color of the back circle to be more bright. There we go. Not red. A little bit more bright. So we want it to differentiate a little bit. We're also going to go back to the middle circle, and this is more like me just checking things out again. I'm going to put a stroke around it and see what happens. Give it about a 1. Reduce it down a little bit. And I'm going to reduce the opacity as well. Alright, that works. So now we've got this sort of like, it's kind of trippy because it kind of looks like it might be like a globe, but it also kind of looks like like if you ever mess with those there's like a little toy that we used to play with that we would like, it would suck to the ground and we'd push down on it, it would pop up. I think they were like poppers or something. It kind of looks like a little gray popper. So that's what it should look like. And so the next thing that we're going to make is so I need to look back at this again. Okay, so we're going to make this sort of inner circle, which is this big sort of dark, sort of blackish circle that extrudes out a little bit. So we're going to come over here, we're going to make another layer, and we're going to call this the front circle. And these are kind of boring names, but it really helps when you're looking at the layer and trying to look for exactly what you're trying to find. So we're going to switch colors to this sort of black gray, and we're going to make a circle. I'm going to make this circle a little tiny bit smaller. So we're going to go for about maybe 122. See what that looks like. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You just kind of want to line it up as best as you can. And you got it right there. And next thing you're going to do is you're going to go to the front circle, blending mode. And we're going to go to bevel and emboss. And what we're going for is more of and this actually kind of works a little bit, but what we're going for is more of like a circle that extrudes out a little bit more. So you can do something like this. This looks kind of alright, but we're going to go for more of a circle appeal. So this is, yeah, so basically we're going to make the depth as far as it can go. Bring the size out. It almost looks like a cone, like you're looking down on a little round pyramid thing. And you're going to soften it out so it feels more round. There you go. And maybe a little bit more. I'm also going to mess with the lighting a little bit just to see how to do this. because it's really the light, the relationship between the light and the darkness that's going to make it feel like a 3D object. That's really the only thing that makes stuff go from feeling like a 2D object to being a 3D object is things like shadows and differences in size between objects, or I think we call it parallaxing. So this is probably as best as we're going to do. I might actually bring the depth down a little bit because it's kind of sticking out a little too much. So now what we're going to do here is the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to merge the layers. And the way to merge all the layers is this is kind of a pain probably, but you're going to go and you're going to keep all of these layers on. So there's like a visibility, so you can turn and off and off the visibility. So you're going to keep these circles visibilities on, but you're going to turn all the other visibilities off. And we got quite a few layers, so I'm sorry about that, but this is how you do it. I'm pretty sure there's a button to just turn everything off, but I kind of don't know where it is right now. Sorry, I'm a total fraud, but this is what we're going to do right now. So if you know how to do it, just do that, save yourself time, but this is what I know how to do at the moment. There's quite a few layers here. Alright, so now, actually now everything's gone. You want to turn off the background layer too, otherwise you'll merge your circle to your background, and you don't want that. You want it to be just these circles and want everything else to be transparent. So now what you're going to do is you're going to come over, you're going to right click, and you're going to choose merge visible. And now what happens is all these things that you made, now they are all just one thing. So you can turn all your layers back on. God, I'm pretty sure there's a way to just turn everything on and off. Like, these are Adobe products, so it's probably me just not paying attention. Sorry about that, audience. And so, okay, we're getting there. Alright, so we're back. But it still kind of looks like this giant circle thing kind of inappropriately in the middle of all this stuff going on. It still looks kind of weird. So we're going to come over here and we're going to give it a shadow. And the shadow is going to hopefully sort of extend it out from everything else around it and make it feel a little bit more like it kind of belongs there. So we got the drop shadow. So we're going to come over to, so I kind of said all that really fast, but we're going to come over here, we're going to right click and we're going to go to blend modes, and we're going to go to drop shadow. And I think I might change this, so we're going to get rid of global light. Like I said, global light can mess up everything if you're not careful. And let's see, we mess with distance, so we don't want the distance to really go out too much. We might bring out the spread and the size. So now it's kind of like a shadow around the whole thing. So I kind of like that, so I'm going to keep it like that. And I think that's good for now. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to make another new layer. And we're going to call it triangle. Oops, can't spell today. Triangle top. And this is something that's going to be kind of similar to what we did when we were making name tags in the last video, but except we're using it for a different reason. So we're going to go over to the pen tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the shift button because we want our lines to be straight. And we're going to make, it doesn't have to be like a perfect triangle because we're humans. It just has to be like, it has to like look moderately good enough. So there we go, we got a triangle. And we're going to come over here with the pen tool, we're going to right click and go to make selection. And now you've got these lines kind of similar to when you use the rectangular tool. So now what you're going to do is you're going to sort of choose a color. For my other thumbnail, I used orange and blue. You can choose whatever color you want. I'm going to go back with orange. And we're going to choose the brush tool and we're going to paint over it. So now it's orange. And we're going to go to the rectangular marquee tool. And we're going to deselect it. We're also going to move the triangle top behind the front circle, or behind the medallion. So we should probably also just rename this medallion because it's like the full thing. The next thing is we're going to go into blending options for the triangle. And we are going to go to bevel and emboss again. And as you can see now we have like this sort of 3D looking circle. You can mess with it, make it look a little bit more 3D-esque. I think I'm going to choose like a Chisel Soft. That's interesting. Gave us these little lines on the edge. Let's see what that looks like. So you can make like a pyramid looking thing, like a duck's beak, or not duck's beak, like an eagle beak or something. Or you can just play around with it. So I'm just gonna mess around with it for a little bit. Let's see. So that makes it more circular. This makes it feel more like a three-dimensional thing with edges. I'm actually gonna turn down the shadows a little bit because I feel like the shadows are a little too tough. Oh, well, I got rid of the global light and that got rid of all the shadows, and that's not really what I want. Let's see that. All right, that's probably as good as I'm gonna get it. I'm actually gonna scoot it over now it looks a little off a little bit. So I'm gonna bring it up a little bit and try to center it as best as I can. All right, for the time being, I'm gonna say that's good enough. We're also gonna actually move the triangle top beneath because it's extending into the top layer and it's kind of covering up the date a little bit. So we're gonna move it down sort of past, so we're going to look for that layer that says top on it, and we're going to put it below the top. That way it's just kind of there. We're also going to give it a shadow to differentiate it a little bit from the stuff behind it. We only want it to differentiate like a little tiny bit. So we're going to actually make the distance 0, spread, make the size a little bit bigger, make the spread a little bit bigger. There we go. For the time being, we'll say that's good enough. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to duplicate this layer, and we're going to call this triangle bottom. Okay, wow. Not spelling things correctly today. And we're actually going to go over to, so we're going to have this selected, this layer selected, and we're going to go to the edit tool, and we're going to transform it, and we're going to flip it vertical. So now it's like facing downward. And also because the shadows, the functions of the shadows are the same, it looks weirder, or it's like way darker. So we're gonna have to mess with that a little bit. So we're gonna try to make it as equal as possible. There we go. That's, for the time being, I'm gonna say that's good enough. And we're actually going to change, because that shadow is a little too strong. It's a little much. So I'm going to reduce the shadow on it, see if that fixes it up a little bit. It makes it a little better. There's not a lot of highlight on it. Kind of wish there was. So I'm actually going to cancel that. So I'm going to go back again and yeah, reduce the shadow. All right. Another thing you can do is if you want, you can merge all this stuff together. If you feel like this is good enough, looking good enough, you can merge it all together. That way you can just kind of move it all at once. But right now I'm not going to merge it all together because I'm afraid I might be making changes to it later. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add this little versus symbol, as you can see right here. And to do that, as you can see, I'm not using the Times New Roman font. I'm using a different font that looks more like an LED lights. And in order to get that, I actually got this font at, so you're going to see what I was watching. Goku vs. Superman 2, Death Battle. But I went to this web page called dafont.com, and I should be able to find it. So if you go into dafont.com and you put LED into their search engine, you're going to find a font called JD LED. No, actually, is that what I used? Actually, let's check that out. Let's just make sure. And actually, no, that's wrong. So I use LED 8x6, and it should be somewhere on here. There it is. So it's going to be this font right here, and you can download it for free. There is kind of a deal that it's only good for personal use. Like if you start using it for stuff that you're going to make money on, it might be a good idea to like donate to them or to ask them for stuff. But you know, for the sake of this video, we're just trying to make things look cool. So you can go to this and you can download it. Look up your download wherever your downloads go. You might have a download folder. You can click on the zip file and you can install it on your computer and you'll have new fonts. I already have it, so I'm not going to do that. But you guys can come over here, download it, and install it. And it only takes like a little while. But until then, I'm actually going to move on. So I've got the LED 8x6 font. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to type in the words versus. And you can't see it right now because the layer is below everything. So we're going to bring the versus font all the way up to the top. So now you can see it. It kind of looks like it says us a little bit, or US, like USA. We're going to change the color to white because black is not going to help people see that. So we're going to go over to color overlay in the blending modes, and I'm going to change the color to white. We're also going to probably give it a little bit of a stroke. There we go. Turn the opacity down a little bit. So give it like a size of 1 and like opacity of like 70. So, and the next thing that we're going to do is actually, that's really kind of the whole medallion. Now, admittedly, okay, so we're going to change, never mind. We're going to change this color, give it a little bit of a difference. So we're going to go back down, and where is the triangle top? There we go. So we're going to go to triangle top, and we're going to change the color to, I'm going to choose blue. You can choose whatever color you want, just to give it a little bit of a differentiation. I'm going to choose more of like a sky blue. And there you go. And that's really all it takes to make the medallion. It's really just you messing around with the bevel tool and things like inner shadows to create this illusion of like a 3D object. Now, admittedly, this medallion doesn't look like this medallion. This medallion, in my opinion, looks like a lot better. But this really takes a little bit more like nitpicking, a little bit more like working on it to make it look better, little tiny detail work. And for this video, it's really not important that I run you through all the detail works because then we'll be here for 5 hours. But it's really just the general idea. So now we're probably going to move on to the next section where I show you guys how to put sort of this cool little, this sort of background, cool light background, like dashing in the battle. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you guys how to do is to put this like cool sort of background light blur shadow thing, kind of like they're running into your thumbnail. Now, to be honest, there's really not like a whole lot of reasons to like put a dash in it. There's not, I don't think I've seen any thumbnails that have this, but I think it's a cool little thing to know about, you know, for banners or whatever, because it looks pretty cool, especially on Captain Falcon. Just look at that. That's pretty cool looking. So we're going to come over here, and we're actually, this is probably going to be one of the more easy things that we've done so far. So we're going to go over to Captain Falcon, and we're going to make a duplicate layer of them. And we're going to call this the blue blur. Oops, the blue blur. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over here to blending options. And actually, to make things easier on ourselves, I'm actually going to cancel real fast. I'm going to turn off Captain Falcon. And now you still have blue blur, which is just a copy of Captain Falcon. And we're going to come over here and we're going to turn the advanced blending all the way off. So now all you see is like his shadow. So we're going to mess with this shadow. So this is, like I said, this is the same shadow that we had before. And we're going to mess with this a little bit. So we're actually going to make this normal for now. And we're going to make the opacity all the way up. And we're going to make the distance go out. We want it to kind of go out at an angle. Like, I think for us it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be like in the 75. It's a little bit much. We're going to make it more like more like that. Actually, I'm going to turn Captain Falcon back on because it's kind of hard to tell. So yeah, we got the blue blur. So we're going to go back to the blue blur layer, and we're going to go to blending options, and we're going to look at this again. Because we want it to look like kind of like a dashing blur or a dashing thing, we don't want it to like be too high or too low. We want it to be kind of like right on them. So the distance is out a little too much. I'm gonna bring it a little closer to them. Gonna make the size a little bit bigger, a little bit more. I'd say about a 10 should be okay. And we're also gonna make this blue. We're gonna make it maybe like that, maybe a little bit darker, slightly darker blue. And this is kind of arbitrary, so you can kind of make it whatever you want. But I'm gonna make it the blue of the medallion, just so there's like a little bit of a consistency, you know. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come over to the filter. So we have it on blue blur. We have our layer set to blue blur. Say that 10 times fast. It's actually quite easy. We're going to go to motion blur. And we're going to make the angle kind of like a 0 angle because we want it to be like a horizontal blur. And we're going to mess with it a little bit. And as you can see, it starts getting a little bit more like actual, like what we saw before. So we're gonna press OK, and I'm actually gonna put the blue blur behind Captain Falcon. That way, it's still a little bit better. We're also gonna change the blending options for the blue blur to be, let's see, let's go to the drop shadow, and let's choose multiply. Let's see what that looks like. It actually goes away, so we're going to see another one. So it's really just about playing with blend modes a little bit. So color dodge looks like it'll be alright, but we're going to mess around a little bit more. So I'm going to say about color dodge should be cool. You might want to mess around, maybe give it like a slight glow or something, but we're not going to mess with that too much. Alright, and I might actually make this drop shadow a little bit less, maybe a little brighter actually, I don't know. Because it seems to be integrating a little too much into the background that we have. So for the time being, we're just going to keep that, and we're actually going to duplicate the layer. We're probably going to end up duplicating it like a bunch of times to give it a sort of a more of an appeal. So as you can see, you're starting to get things, it's starting to get a little bit brighter closer to them, and it gets a little bit less bright farther out. It kind of feels like a, if you've ever played like Splinter Cell or like some spy video game, it feels like they're using the heat sensor goggles or something, and that's kind of what you want to go for. And then we're going to go, so for now we're just going to say this is good enough. And we're going to go over to Zero Suit Samus. And we are going to do the same thing and duplicate her layer. Call this Zero Shadow. And we're going to do the same thing for Zero Shadow. We're going to go to blend modes for it by right clicking on the layer. And we're going to make the advanced blending 0. Mess with the drop shadow. And we're going to make this drop shadow like orange, to sort of fit in with this sort of the medallion, the bottom of the medallion. We're also going to make it normal for the time being. And let's see, we'll spread it out a little bit more. So it really depends on what angle it's going at, because I'm not really sure where it's going. So it's moving a little much that way. Alright, so that works pretty well. We might move the distance a little bit more this way. Okay, there we go. Might reduce the spread a little bit, make the size a little bit smaller. There you go. I think that's pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to, once again, we're going to blur it, give a bit of a motion blur to it, a little sense of urgency. And let's see. I think 38 was what we used for Captain Falcon, but we might not do the same thing for her. We might make it a little bit. So likewise, we are going to put, so what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the layer, and we're going to put one layer, we're going to put most of her shadows behind her, but we're going to have one shadow in front, because when you have one shadow in front, it kind of gives it a sense of like energy. Like if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z as a kid, they didn't just have like the aura wasn't just behind them, it was kind of in front of them too, and it made it feel like it like enveloped them. So that's what you kind of want to do. Like right now, Falcon doesn't have that, and it's kind of weird. It just looks like there's blue behind him, and especially when I've got these shadows, it just kind of looks like there's blue behind him. So I might end up getting rid of the shadows. But if you put it in front of them a little bit too, it kind of integrates the shadows into their person a little bit more. So we're going to go over to zero. So we're going to go over back to this zero shadow copy that we made that's below the actual zero suit sprite. And we're just going to make one more. We're going to duplicate this layer, make one more. And it just really brings the shadow out. It almost brings it out too much, so I might actually just turn this layer off. So I'm going to go back to Captain Falcon. And where's Captain Falcon? All right, so we got Captain Falcon, and he's got these two blue blur copies. So we're going to make another copy of blue blur. We're going to duplicate it, blue blur 3, and we're going to put it above Captain Falcon. So now it's actually kind of scary looking. So I might change it up a little bit. And I'm going to turn down opacity a little bit. Oh, never mind. Actually, that's not even his fault. That's actually just that's just the building in the background. I didn't know what that was going on over there. But it actually, so now it like envelops him a little bit more. And if you want, you can also scoot the shadow a little bit more into Captain Falcon if you want. Once again, it's sort of a nitpicky kind of thing. But actually, for the most part, let's check and see, make sure I didn't forget something. Actually, there's one more thing. There's this one little tiny itty bitty miscellaneous thing going on in the background that you might not have noticed. So we're going to have one more section where we talk about that. Alright, so one thing that I had forgotten to talk about is that if you have a situation kind of like right here where we've got Zero Suit Samus and her shadow is like a little more, it's a little much, and you've got Captain Falcon's shadow, and the shadow that kind of looks cool because it's kind of like it's blue over here and it kind of fades out a little bit, and hers isn't quite as dynamic. You can kind of try to fix it up, make it look a little bit different by going over to the eraser tool. And as you can see, there's different kinds of erasers. So it's not just like when your basic erasers that you might have had when you were in school. You've got access to different ones, so you can like do this, and it gets different depending on the kind of eraser you're using. So I'm actually going to go back. There we go. And actually, let's try out this one. Actually, let's do that one. This one looks like a bird. It's kind of cool. So different erasers kind of do different stuff. So, but like for example, like Zero Suit Samus, her shadow is kind of like all over. So I can choose an eraser like I'm gonna take this one, and I can kind of just softly try to make it a little bit more manageable. A little bit. And also like this one kind of creates these cool like lines. If you kind of just do it once. So yeah, it might be a good idea to just kind of like play around with the eraser tool as well. Just thought I'd add that. Okay, so the for real, I swear, the for real final thing that I'm going to talk about and we'll be done for today is this little tiny thing, this little line going on in the background, this little thing that kind of looks like a line from Tron, if you've ever seen that movie, or Tron Legacy if you're a little younger. And this is, like I said, this is one of those little miscellaneous things, kind of like the blur that not everybody really needs, but it might just be like a little cool little extra to add, you know, to make it look a little bit more dynamic. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that, and that might actually be one of the more simple things to do. So we're going to go over to layer, and we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to call it, screw it, we're going to call it the Tron line, because it kind of looks like one of those Tron lines. And we're going to go to the pen tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the pen tool, we're going to hold down shift, and we're going to draw a line, we're going to draw it, and we might actually have to change the shadows a little bit, because the shadows are kind of enveloping this area. And we're going to draw, we're going to keep holding down shift key, we're going to draw it, down, draw it this way, well we're actually going to draw a little bit more this way, and we're going to draw all the way this way. So now I might zoom, I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit, so I can actually see what I'm doing, and then go back to, so I use the zoom tool right here. And if you don't know, you can switch between zoom in and zoom out by holding down the Alt key. So you can switch between the two. So I'm going to zoom in again, and I'm going to go back to the pen tool, and I'm going to hold down shift and I make a little itty bitty, probably as small as I can make it, little itty bitty tiny line. And I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. I'm going to hold down the shift key. That way your lines are pretty equal. And I'm going to scoot it. I'm going to make it about that big. Can I scoot it back? No, I can't undo it. So I'm actually going to undo that. That's a little too much. Actually we're good. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to get about here. And the good thing is you're not really going to see this line. It's kind of like getting big and then small, but you're not really going to see it. So like, thank the Lord. And here we go. So we're going to be still holding down the shift key. We're going to make this line go this way, and then we're going to complete the circle or the triangle line thing. And we're going to right click on it while we're still in the pen tool and create a make selection. And we're going to say OK. So I'm actually going to move the Tron line all the way to the top so I can actually see it. And you're going to go over to, we're actually going to zoom out again. So we're going to we're going to go to the zoom tool, we're going to hold down the Alt key, and we're going to zoom out. And we're going to go to the brush tool because it really doesn't matter. You're just going to color it in with whatever color. It doesn't really matter for what we're going to do next. So now you've got, you're going to go to the triangle marquee tool, and we're going to get rid of this triangle, this moving lines triangle thing. So now you've got this line, and it's kind of ugly looking. Why did we add this? So in order to make fix this up a little bit, we're going to go to the blending modes, and we're actually going to go to color or gradient overlay. And now it's like there's a line that's like white over here, and as you move it, it becomes more black. So we're going to actually change the colors that are being used. We're going to go over here to this black, and we're going to change it to be. We're going to actually choose the color picker. We're going to choose this orange right here. So we want it to be, actually, no, that's wrong. Sorry. We're going to go and choose this blue. And then we're going to go to the white, and we're going to choose this orange right here. So now you've got the same colors that you've got on the thumbnail for the little triangles and for their shadows. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the angle. So that's a little bit more, it kind of fits better. And we're also going to reduce the scale, make it a little bit more, see how we can do this. Yeah, because you want it to be mostly orange on this side, and it should start becoming blue on this side. So this works out pretty good. Next thing that we're going to do is I made the stroke not black. I made the stroke white. So now it's kind of more shiny. And I might make it, there you go, it's a little bit better. And now we're going to move this Tron line behind the characters. So I'm going to look for Captain Falcon and Zero Suit Samus, and we want to put it behind them and their shadows. We don't want it to be behind like the lightning and stuff though. So because of Zero Suit Samus's obnoxious shadow, you can't really see it. But as you can see with this one, you can really kind of tell. And if you kind of bring it out a little bit more like a thumbnail would be, that actually looks pretty nice. So actually, I think that's the final thing. I'm probably going to do a conclusion, and this will be the end of the video soon. So we've reached the end of the video, and it's been a pretty long video. So, thanks for hanging with me up to the end, and if you were one of the people who maybe like skipped to the end just to see and you just got to the adept level, like if you stopped and you didn't do the medallion, thanks for hanging at least up to that point. And hopefully, like I ran through a lot of things in this video, and hopefully you will remember it all, and hopefully you'll be able to take it away and make some really cool thumbnails in the future. It'd be nice to see some more artistic and creative thumbnails for the Smash community. I think that'll really help the internet, our YouTube presence. And actually, to be honest, this thumbnail, I kind of shortchanged you a little bit because this thumbnail is a little bit better. It's got a little bit more going on, a little bit of like nitpicky stuff to it. But like I said earlier on, that if I ran you through like the whole process to like the whole nitpicking process, we'd be here for like another 3 hours. So what really matters is that you kind of have these sort of basic ideas on how to like work the bevel and how to like use shadows to create these sort of interesting dashes and using like how to use like textures, like how you got down here, like the sort of steel sheen to give it a little bit of a more dynamic feel. So pretty much, like I said, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for sticking with me. This has been Smashing and Streaming, and I'll see you guys later.